I said, this lesson runs long, so take the time you need to get through it. You don't have to get through it in one shot. Okay, so I am still at point 2, policy 1, weapons, and in this discussion of weapons, I'm in a subsection which I call old weapons. So let's take a little tour down memory lane here to a couple of weeks ago, where I showed you some footage of these arc light strikes. All right. So now these B-52 bombers, and you can see one of them, these are famous images, unloading its bomb, what's called a bomb stick, and here taking off. And you just get a sense of just how massive these things are. They're still flying. They made the last of them in, man, I think the last B-52 was made in the early 70s or something like that. And it sounds rather terrifying. I'm amazed that the Air Force, Jesus, permits people in these things, because they've upgraded the computer systems and so on, but they're still antique. They're still what they call legacy systems. Legacy systems, yeah, right. Which means it's so old that it's running command line, or something like that. Like it's not Windows 95. Basically, let's put it that way. The systems are the computer systems are older than 25 years old. And if you think about that, have you ever seen a computer which is 25 years old that's actually running? Because I have. I mean, I used to have one actually. The damn thing wouldn't stop. It was amazing. You couldn't connect it to anything though. You couldn't save data from it to anything because there was no way to do that anyway. So these B-52s engage in what are called arc light missions, right? So I just want to be clear here with this slide. Sorry, it's probably over here, where you see the word arc light. Arc light here does not refer to the weapon. Arc light refers to what the weapon is doing. An arc light strike is one of these drops of major tons of munitions in one place. Okay, so America had a great deal of experience with using particular weapons during World War II and Korea. And I've talked about saturation bombing before, and that this has become a standard strategy for the United States with the so-called B-29, it was called the B-29 Flying Fortress, as it was called. This machine you're looking at here comes out of the 1960s and is the so-called B-52 Super Fortress. And the planes were typically based in Guam, which I suspect is over there. So you'll see Guam as this little island. It's actually just a little dot on the map. And it has underneath it Andersen AFB, which is Air Force Base. So okay, I'm just going to stay on this slide for a moment. The B-52 could fly all day, which was unusual at the time. There are now, many of you will have flown, say, to New Zealand or Hawaii. Well, Hawaii is actually within reasonable distance, but you may have made transatlantic or transglobal flights. And you know that there can be extremely long legs of a flight that may take, say, 10 hours of flying. And 10 hours of flying indicates just how much fuel you're carrying, because the real issue here is how much fuel can you carry. It's not so much whether people are uncomfortable. Of course you're uncomfortable. It's a plane flight. Your job is to be uncomfortable. Of course you're miserable. Of course you don't have enough leg room. I'll just move over here. So the B-52 was one of these planes that could fly all day because it could be refueled in the air. So it didn't have to land to be refueled. And there are these docking mechanisms where there are air tankers. Their whole job is basically to, they are tankers. They are these flying, very slow moving flying buses basically that are full of fuel. And they will hover over a tanker. I don't have pictures of this for you because it's, I don't know, you didn't think you'd find it interesting. And they extend this, it couldn't be more sexual. And Kubrick makes much of this at the beginning of Dr. Strangelove. So if you want to see actual air refueling in process, have a look at the very beginning, the opening credits of Dr. Strangelove, and you'll see that, you know. And it's done to it's one of the Try a Little Tenderness, or one of those love songs that, because it's such an obvious coupling guy thing. But they refuel these in the air, and then they go and return they drop off a full bomb load, and then they return, right? So they flew at about 30,000 feet, which is the same level roughly that you would fly if you were in a commercial airliner. It's just 28,000 feet is kind of normal for a commercial airliner, which is about 6 miles up. And the main risk to them is not other planes, because the people flying in Vietnam, if there were Chinese planes and Russian planes and so on, couldn't get that high, and they couldn't get out, and they couldn't fight these planes. But they did use surface-to-air missiles, and a surface-to-air missile is exactly what it sounds like. It's a missile which is one job is to basically shoot up and blow up a plane, and they're called SAMs, surface-to-air missile, SAM, right? SAMs. And that's your main way of attacking these aircraft, which are slow moving, right? But they're very high, is to fire off a missile. And these missiles actually have rocket motors. I mean, they're very sophisticated pieces of equipment. They had early telemetry, so they could tell. Basically, you could guide them, and they were guided missiles. Okay, so what you'll see is that the B-52, which was originally designated as a nuclear bomber, was redesigned for these Arclight missions. And what you're going to see here is that they leave, let me just have a look at, yeah, okay. So let me just go through this what's happening on this map with you. So I think that I can annotate this map. Yeah, I can. Let me get a color here that's going to show up for you. Let's go with party green. Okay. So if I can find this is always what happens. Let's see where it is. There it is. Okay. So here is where we're going to start, where I put the green circle. And off we fly, and you'll see B-2 Bomber Force inbound. So now we're following the red line. And then we get to this bizarre thing called compression boxes. Well, you start off with a flight of these, and like say 6 or so planes in a mission, and they spread out. I mean, they're going to fly in different places, and they don't all group together. They go at different speeds, they hit different winds, and so on. So at the point that they arrive here, let's see if I can. Oh yeah, there we go. At this, whoops, this is kind of like using an Etch-a-Sketch. At these compression boxes, they spread out. So at this map point, they come together again over one particular, they converge on an area, and they reform, right? And the tanker forces, which you can see here, leaving, oh dear, this is not exactly high technology, leaving Okinawa. So these tankers begin to fly towards the B-52s at the compression boxes, where they're all going to find them in one place. And at this point, they refuel. Okay. Then we follow the one of the lines takes the tankers around, and they go back to Okinawa. So they have to be able to get to the B-52s. The other line follows the B-52s in, and they get around, let me see where I am now. I'm not in love with this. It's kind of amusing, at least. Okay, so here's the second compression box here, where you again get the bombers together before they begin to overfly Vietnam. So they've been flying now for I'm trying to remember what the timing on this is. My memory is about 6 hours to fly from Guam at the speeds that they're flying because they're slow, right? They're slow because they're full, they're heavy, they're fully loaded with fuel, and they're fully loaded with bombs. They got tons, literally tons of bombs on. At that point, they begin runs into North Vietnam. So they cross South Vietnam, where they're going to not be attacked. And you can see that what they're doing is flying up the western border of Vietnam. This is going to become very, very important. And then because they're trying to get to Hanoi, right? So you can see here, there we go. So here you see Hanoi and Haiphong. Haiphong is the harbor, and it's famous because the Haiphong harbor was mined by, well, there's a big argument of exactly who mined it first. So that the Americans couldn't attack it, was the idea, to make the Navy, so the Navy couldn't get in there. So these 3 red lines that you see coming up like a little tree, and then this base from the RT Air Force Base, is also a place where they can fly from. It's a much shorter mission. So you fly over. So the mission is then fly over Hanoi, as far north as you can get, drop all your bombs, turn around, come back. So now we follow the blue lines back, and we see, Jesus, oh man, we can do better. You would think, but no. This feels to me like, talking about 1995. This feels like Windows 95 to me. So if you follow the blue lines back, then we come all the way along the blue line, and now I think here we go. Okay. Maybe I can move this now. Oh, I can move it. Excellent. Good. Okay. So now as you can follow my mouse, we come along the B-52 return back to Guam. Right? So my memory is that this whole trip would take 12 to 14 hours, depending on the winds, because that's a lot of what makes the issue, basically.